there is a concept, particularly in this practice, but in many practices, and it's known as spiritual growth. With the idea being that there is some kind of evolutionary, academic, internal process that allows us to become more spiritual or more effectively spiritual, or somehow to attain and arrive at something that demonstrates the effect of all of our years of practice. And I think everybody has a kind of built-in idea of what that will be for them. How will you know when you've gotten there? Especially in a practice that doesn't hand out degrees, at least in this particular version. How do you know when you've arrived at a greater spiritual capacity? I've always thought of spiritual practice when I was younger as a kind of becoming a superhero. That I would develop all sorts of powers and capacities that in my mind were all about helping others. That somehow I would arrive at this place where I could become a focal point for all of the powers and energies of the universe so that I could actually come and bestow beneficence on the people around me. And that I would watch that emerge and I would become more and more saintly, more attained, more illuminated, more unquote, quote, special on some level. Rudy was very involved in the idea of spiritual growth. And he had a very interesting idea, which was that spiritual growth began after you became a whole person. When we met Rudy, most of us who were still around, who met Rudy back in the 1960s, we were about as unformed a group of people as you can imagine. We were simply beginning to awaken to the possibility of a life beyond the world of 1960s America. We were starting to envision a change in ourselves, a change in the social order that would somehow come from higher expanded consciousness. And what Rudy saw, and I think clearly and importantly, was what a mess we were as people, how unformed we were, incomplete, incapable in many ways of functioning in the world. And I think he took it upon himself to make us better, more complete people. I mean, in a personal sense, Rudy knew that I wanted to be a filmmaker, playwright, screenwriter, all of these different things. And he knew that I hadn't taken a single step in that direction other than dream about it, talk about it, wish to do it, and having gone to film school. But I was really ungrounded on so many levels. And one of the things he did was to write 20 songs for a musical called Big Black Rainbow. And he gave them to me. And he said, write the book. Write the book. And it's a crazy show. I won't even go into the nature of it all. And we had two other people in class who were musicians, and he made them They wrote the music for the show. And I mean, Rudy loved theater and he loved that world, but I really felt he did it for me. He did it for me so that I could begin to actually activate the world of growing in the direction that I needed and wanted to grow, which was to have a career, to have a ability to make my way in the material world. It was totally non-spiritual on some level. And yet, at the core, he knew that until I found my way into forming a solid human being, I would not be able to move into the spiritual dimension. I've told this story before, probably most of you have heard it, but at one point he congratulated me. He said, "You know, Bruce, when I met you, you were diarrhea, and now you're a solid turd. Congratulations." That really was his vision, that one needed to become accomplished in some way, not for the sake of accomplishment, which is what most of us would have believed, but because it's only by developing a muscle system and a capacity to function and do that you can finally move beyond. It's very hard to move beyond the thing you haven't gotten, the thing you haven't achieved. Hard to move beyond your dreams, hard to move beyond having a sloppy, lazy, incomplete, and unsatisfying life. That is a total trap for people. So many people live in a state of disorganization, disturbance, unhappiness, unfulfilled potential, and it traps them over and over and over again in their inability to finally grow spiritually. And it's a real trap. And I know as a storyteller that not everybody makes it out of that trap in any kind of easy way. The nature of storytelling, the nature of drama, is that you have to confront your limitations and do something somewhere along the way to get beyond them. Because if you don't get beyond yourself, you are stuck in being you. And the source of all suffering is you. Just you. The world is not the source of your suffering. It's how you interact with the world and the story you tell yourself about yourself in the world. That's where you get miserable. The reality has nothing to do with the story you tell yourself. So Rudy wanted us to have a good story. Tell yourself a good story, a story of achievement, of rising out of the ashes, of becoming something out of nothing, having something that the world would look at and respond to, perhaps honor, acknowledge, or at least you could look at yourself and go, boy, I came from nothing and I made myself into something, a loving father, a capable person in the workforce. You know, whatever it may be, you find your way to this place of status and you think in a way you've achieved something, and in a way you have. And Rudy would say that is the beginning of your spiritual life, because once you have attained something fundamentally solid and real, you have to begin to disassemble it. You have to disassemble your attachment to that thing. Because spiritual life is liberation. It's not being caught in the form, it's being freed from the form. But you can't free yourself from a form that hasn't formed. So you all have, every one of you, an obligation to find the wholeness of your life, to find the satisfying nature of your life. Now, I will tell you this. Many lives, that's hard to do. Many lives are filled with real suffering, real loss, real drama, real difficulty. And I meet one person after another with stories to tell me about that. The horrible things that happened, the difficulties they faced, and what I keep getting out of it is, well, where is the triumph? Everyone has difficulties on some level. Where is the drama? Where is the story? If somebody brought most of their lives that you have to me as a storyteller and said, turn this into a movie, oh, you should make this a movie. I have suffered more than anybody, it's a movie, you know? And I go, who wants to see that movie? Nobody wants to see your movie, and they don't want to see your movie because it's not finished, because there's no third act. You haven't taken the suffering, you haven't taken the drama, you haven't taken the loss, you haven't taken the human struggle and transformed it into something that is deeply, deeply completed and liberating. A kind of, through this unbelievable drama, through this incredible source of suffering and pain and unhappiness, I have found something so simple, so beautiful, so clear, so transcendent, that all of that was worth the ride. That's your third act. That's everybody's third act. You find that no matter what you were given, however hard it was, no matter what world you found yourself in, you have turned it into something beyond. And that's the spiritual journey. The spiritual journey is not to get. The spiritual journey is to take what you have, to take the life you've worked for or the life you've been given, and then slowly accept what's there, accept the reality of it, and then let it go, bit by bit by bit by bit. Our practice has at its core this word called surrender. Surrender is the practice. It's the effort. We have another part of it called help. Help me, please, to surrender. What we are primarily doing in this work is building a life and letting it go by surrendering moment to moment the construction of that world. Rudy said, very interestingly, when you build the structure of your life, put a stick of dynamite on every level of the building that you're constructing, so at the right time it can be brought down. And that's really important, and that's spiritual awareness, understanding that no matter what you construct, it is temporary. And at the core of Buddha's teaching of impermanence is the temporary nature of life. It forms and it dissipates. It comes together and it falls apart. You can help it fall apart consciously. You can be an engineer of its destruction. You can be the one who dismantles it. And the incredible thing about dismantling the life you had is that it doesn't rob you, it gives you. Letting go of the little tiny drama of your existence, whatever it may be, the fact that you become president, or the fact that you become a farm worker, or the fact that you become somebody who sits in a cave. Whatever you do, you have to let go of it. And it's letting go of this idea of you, this sense of who you are, what you've done or haven't done, of your successes and your failures. You take all of that into play and you let it go. And rather than end up as nothing, you end up as everything. The journey into dissolution is the journey into oneness. Letting go of yourself frees you to be who you truly are. We are born as everything and become a particular person, a particular viewpoint on the world, with a particular narrative. And I have to say, the universe is fascinated by our narratives. The universe loves them. We tell it to ourselves all day long. You go, oh, I'm so happy. Oh, I'm so miserable. Oh, it's so great. Oh, it's so terrible. Blah, 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 blah. You're building, when you do that, in this noise in your brain and in your head and in your egocentric centers here, right here, as you tell yourself these stories, you're building a construct that is sometimes great storytelling and sometimes melodrama and awful. But it's a story the universe seems to want to have told. It seems to want your perspective, or it wouldn't have gone to all of this trouble to make you. You were constructed, you were built, you were a product of 14 billion years in this life cycle of a universe that wanted to manifest, and it wanted to make you. You. Not so, everybody else, but you. And it wanted to do it for reasons most of us can't understand, but we had to be made in a particular way to become these particular people with our own particular nature and suffering and drama and fears and hopes and doubts and all of that stuff. And then we start to let it go and remember who we are. We remember the vastness of our true being. We let it go. Spiritual growth is the construction of a self and then the dismantling of the self. Spiritual growth is really liberating. It really lets you let go of everything. And in the letting go process, which can be incremental or it can be sudden and spontaneous, there is like a unbelievable wake up to who you have always been. Who you have always been. And one of the main problems with people trying to have spiritual growth is that they are reconstructing and reestablishing day by day the solid, permanent self that will never survive. I am a better person. I am a good person. I'm a spiritual person. I am a blessed person. I am a yogi. I am a whatever. I'm the chosen person, a chosen being. Whatever it is you build yourself into, that's fine, except it's going to go. You can't keep it. It's all going to go. You walk around looking at all these people. I mean, it's just driving here through a crowd of Hasidic Jews walking home from shul and dressed in costumes and all of these things and very holy. And I look at them and I go, yes, 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 but all of that separation from the world, all of that thing that you're doing, all of that specialness, all of that chosen holiness is only temporary. Ultimately, it's gone. And if you don't make it possible to make that happen, it will happen in spite of you. And when it happens in spite of you, it isn't pleasurable because it's like ripping you apart. It's like tearing you to shreds. You become that which ultimately is demolished and destroyed by what seems to be an outside force. If you can contribute to that process by letting go bit by bit by bit by bit over the course of a lifetime, and Rudy called this a life's work for a reason, if you can just let go, let go, let go, this stuff falls away and falls away and falls away. And at some point, as my experience gave me, the last brick falls and there's nothing there. You become enlightened, meaning you are not carrying any weight anymore at all. You're just light. You're just awake. You're just present. There is just this, and this is all there is, which includes every one of you and every one of whatever this being is that's talking to you. It's one thing. It's one massive, beautiful, exquisite thing. And most of us miss that. We miss it because we're telling ourselves a story about how sad our life is, or how difficult, or how wonderful and how great we are, and all of whatever it is, that incredible distraction of narrative that builds and builds and builds a tale that makes us look good in the eyes of others and of ourselves. It's a waste of time, ultimately. It's a waste of time. It is going to be taken away. Help the process. Spiritual growth is helping. If you sit down every day for 20 minutes and you let go of one more brick, one more thing you tell yourself, if you just let go of the sadness, you let go of the drama, you let go of whatever it is, and then you don't reconstitute it the next day. You know, you do the negative psychic tension release exercise. You let it go, let it go, let it go. Let this stuff drain away. And you find yourself every day a little bit more open, a little bit more free, a little bit more you. And then when the time comes to finally free yourself from the earth, there's nobody to free. You're already there. Been talking about my biological issues recently, and one of them was waking up the other night with like the worst headache I've ever had in my life. And I really didn't know what it was, and my mother died of a stroke at my age from a headache, and I figured, oh, this is it. This is it. I'm going. And so I just went, I needed to write a love letter to my wife and my kids. And so I went on my little phone, you know, I love you so much if I'm not here in the morning, you know, all that kind of stuff. Because what else is there to do? I didn't want to wake her up. I didn't want to, go to the hospital. What a drag. So I just wrote my little note, And it was, and I sat there, and I suddenly became flooded by what a beautiful life I had. What a beautiful life, and everything about it. And I got to say, all the crap and all the stuff that didn't work and all the Hollywood issues that were so weird and strange, and I mean, everything that had happened in my life suddenly rose up, and I just stared at it with a sense of, it couldn't have been more beautiful. It could not have been more beautiful, and nor can your life. Your life could not be more beautiful. And you won't know that maybe until you're on your deathbed. And if you don't know it on your deathbed, maybe as your body decomposes and your spirit ascends somewhere, or maybe they're going to have to send you back, if that's how it works, for another life so you can figure this out. You know? But somewhere along the line, figure it out. Spiritual growth is figuring it out. Spiritual growth is not about attainment, it's about letting it go. It's about surrender. It's about freeing yourself from the drama, the illusion, the delusion, the stuff you tell yourself that isn't true, the stuff other people tell you that isn't true. You finally, through spiritual practice, meaning going deep into your heart, going way into the infinite nature of your inner being, reaching out into the cosmos, you just sit there and you feel yourself getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until you realize what a beauty it is, what a simple beauty it is. Blanche and I took a long walk yesterday after the rain, and the sun came out, and these farm fields that were like, glistening with moisture, and cows out there seeming happier than most human beings I know, and we just walked, and I kept looking at it and saying, this is so beautiful. There was no drama, there was no politics, there was nothing, there was no newspapers. It was just pure being. And in truth, you can walk away from your life at any given moment. You can walk down a country lane, just drive to Big Indian. Drive somewhere, go somewhere, just take a walk. If you're in the right place, you can take a walk through downtown Manhattan. It's nothing but beautiful. It's just incredibly beautiful. Yes, it has ugliness to it. Yes, there are people suffering. Yes, there's distraction beyond belief. Yes, it's crowded and discomforting on so many levels if you walk through crowds of people sometimes. But then if you find yourself in this really simple space, it's like, this is life. This is life. This is the manifested form of the vast unmanifested reality. And you are seeing it in this concretized form because you can appreciate it, you can touch it, you can lick it, you can eat it, you can swallow it, you can embrace it, you can kick it in the ass, you can do whatever you want to this big materialized universe that we are all inhabiting. And at some point, you will realize, no matter how hard it was, how awful it was, how complicated it was, you will look back in tears running down your face because you will realize after the fact how beautiful it was. Trust me, you can understand if you work at it now how beautiful it is. Don't go to was. Don't go, oh, it was so beautiful, why didn't I know? Forget that. Be it now. This is it now. The only thing that keeps you from loving it now is you're totally caught up in the problems facing you in the future and the dissatisfactions of the past, and you're living anywhere but here. How can you appreciate the beauty that's here and now if you're caught up in the ugliness that you think is coming or was? You can't do it. That's where your brain goes, and you can live a whole life caught up in the could have been, would have been, should have been, and you miss everything. You miss this. And if you miss this, you've missed it all. And if you have a life of muscle relating to future and past, and no muscle related to present tense, then what happens is that you don't know how to hold or fall into or surrender into or accept the reality of this moment. And this moment is a muscle of being. It's just being. And if you have to let go of everything else to be, if you can't do that, you won't be. And being is the secret. Being is everything. Spiritual growth is about being. And that's what you're here to figure out. Every one of you is here to figure it out. And a class like this helps you because, one, you hear it reinforced verbally. When I work with you energetically, what happens is that the parts of you that are in the way, that you can't see because most of us are blind to ourselves, they start to get broken down, they get shifted in a way that starts to be able to free them. It's a little bit like Miralax, you know. I think I come in, the energy comes in to help this stuff flow out, okay? And it's not much more than that. It's nothing to get all crazy about. It's just letting it get out of the system. So you can find yourself back into a nice, comfortable, central, this is who I am, where I am space. And it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's what you're here for. The whole journey is to be here, not to get there, not to get to heaven, not to live a life that will have a future positivity. No life will have future positivity if your present tense doesn't have future. It doesn't have present tense positivity. Building a life on positive now makes the future positive now. And it transforms the past into the thing that brought you into the positive now. So everything about the past that you didn't like, well, it ended up well. All's well that ends well. Shakespeare told us that. So if it ends well right now, if you're in a state of gratitude and openness and joy now, and you learn to live in that, in 10 years you'll be in that space still, and 20 years. And then the real tests come up. Blanche pointed out today that we may be the oldest people in this room. And one of the things we have discovered, which I hate to tell you you're going to discover, is getting old is hard. And there's a lot of stuff that goes on. And a lot of pains that start and you realize, oh, those aren't going to go away. Oh, this is the end game. Oh, this isn't easy. Oh, there's scariness here. All that stuff starts to come. That's when all of this practice comes into play. All of these years of being present tense, that's where that becomes so important. I am so grateful that I have had 50 dedicated years of spiritual practice. I haven't sat around saying, oh, I really should meditate someday. I really should do it. I know I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it next week. I'm going to do it tomorrow. If that's where your game is right now, you're never going to get there. If this is a once in a while, occasional, come to a retreat every year, I'll have my spiritual life, it's bullshit. And I relate it completely to going to the gym once a month or once a year. What is that about? Why would you go to the gym once a year and think you're doing anything? It's ridiculous. You're not doing anything. You're going to the gym to make your head say, oh, I went to the gym. And then you'll tell all your friends, yeah, just at the gym today, I had a great workout, blah, blah, blah. What crap that is. Anybody can look at you and they can tell it didn't do anything. But people do it all the time. We live in this stupid place that tells stories and doesn't care about truth. Truth is, I don't go to the gym and I'm falling apart. The truth is, I am meditating every day and I am letting go and coming apart. You figure it out. What's the story you want to tell yourself? And better, what is the truth of that story? There's nothing better than letting go of your story, showing up at a cocktail party with nothing to say. I mean, that was a real awkward one for me at first, but I have really learned I got nothing to say. People say, what do you do? I say, I'm a grandpa. I'm happy to say that. I don't want to have to go back into the past. I don't have, the minute I go and go, look, I'm an Oscar winner. It does all these things. It's interesting what happens when you tell people you're an Oscar winner. It doesn't mean, they idolize you. They go, their ego is so threatened that they immediately go into, and their story comes out. So there's no appreciation of your achievement. There's just an ego in defense, trying to present itself to be equal to you. Let that go. If you're just a grandpa, nobody has to do anything. They can just be themselves. Oh, yeah, me too. And it gets a little bit lighter and a little bit lighter, and then every so often, something real gets said. Life's hard. I appreciate my coffee in the morning. I went for a walk today and I saw a squirrel feeding its babies, and it was the most beautiful moment. That's what comes up. And if that's boring to you, and if that doesn't add to the larger worldview of who you are and what you are, so be it. So be it. This is a journey we're all on, and every one of you is completely responsible for you. You can let this teaching sort of be your path, but in the end, there's only you and there's only your path. Rudy didn't lead me to Rudy's path. Rudy led me to my path. And if you are not on your path, and if you are occasionally on it, or thinking about getting on it, or pretending you're on it, or telling stories about how you're on it, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. The only thing that means something is being on it. Living a life of real spiritual unfolding, reaching, dialoguing with the larger creative forces of the universe, which happen to be your very essence, your very soul. Finding a way to that voice in you that knows it all. Finding a way to the wisdom that comes from basically not knowing anything. One of the great lessons of spiritual unfolding is you don't know shit. You really don't. This is beyond understanding. It's beyond comprehension. It is this mystery of mysteries, and you are at its source. You are the source of it. Walk into the mystery. Walk into the mystery. That's what we're here for. Become one with this totality and live that out for as long as you have a body. Love it as deeply as you possibly can, because that's what you're going to feel when you leave. Love this, love this, love this, and say thank you, thank you, thank you, and you will have attained spiritual growth. You will have grown in terms of what is, and not what should be, would be, could be, might have been. You will be what is now, eternally present. That's the path. That's spiritual growth. It's what we're all working for, and nobody can do it for you. So take charge of your path, take charge of your growth, go to the spiritual gym, build those muscles, and have a great life. Any questions? Kai.
First I want to say that it feels really good to be sitting in this room. I feel very grateful. I feel a lot of love in the room. It feels really nice. So I want to thank you and Blanche for really organizing everybody together and making the trip to the East Coast and getting us all up the Big Indian. It feels really good. And I want to ask a question about the meditation. So when you're going around the room, I was kind of, I'm looking at you as a trident of energy, and you went around the room, and I wasn't really quite sure in the beginning whether you were working with me or with someone whose eye line was like directly adjacent to me. And the reason is, and I didn't until, because I think you worked with some people adjacent to me, and then you came to me, and I was like, oh, now we're working together. Because when you were working with someone adjacent to me, like I could feel the energy. And when I was looking at you, like you changed. There are times where you look light, you look dark, the visual changed. And so during those times, I because I could feel the energy, I was like, oh, are you working with me? Or, oh, are you not working with me? And you're giving somebody else an adjustment, so I should sound like get out of the way because that adjustment's not meant for me. Or I kind of felt like, well, am I kind of intruding because you're almost looking at me and I'm looking directly at you, and I'm like, am I intruding on someone else's energy? Should I back off? I wasn't sure what to do.
So let me address that. Every class is its own configuration. It is a collective consciousness. We assemble as a particular group, and everyone I work with is part of a whole. So when I'm working with someone there, I'm working with you. The idea that you are sitting there wondering if it's me is exactly the thing that you need to watch and go, stop. Because that's separating you from everything else that's going on. And it's not uncommon. I used to do the same thing with Rudy. I know that experience of saying, is he working with me? But when I work with anybody in this room, it is opening channels. It is a communion of sort. And what's happening is a person over here that I'm working with is opening something in you. The reason they're in the room together in this collective environment is that we're all one energy. And by being all working together, we are freeing each other in very big terms of stuff that is individually ours and collectively ours. So it's not a process of one-on-one alone. It's really the energy and the collective. It's all one, it's one thing, and it's very powerful. You know, I mean, I think this is pretty obvious, but where else can you go and do this? It's not like this is, you know, you can't go anywhere else except for, you know, I mean, it's a movie where everyone in the theater is laughing at the same time is sort of a similar thing. A football game where a stadium worth of people is on one ball, a tennis ball, a football, a baseball, one pointedness gives you some of that, but this is that and more. It is really transformative. And it is something Rudy came to through his teachers, Swami Nityananda. There are lines of teachers who have taught this particular kind of practice. It's not universal, there's a lot of other kinds of practice, but this, I can only say it's effective because of my own experience. Whether it's effective for you, you tell me. But a lot of you come from other places, Indiana, New York City, I mean, you come from distances to be here, Connecticut, you know, that's a sign of something. And I've often said, your effort to get here is almost more important than just the being here, because it shows a kind of commitment or an obligation or a desire to be part of what this is. It's very important. But once you get here, rather than sitting around and basking and having made the effort, you should then say, well, I'm here, I might as well open. And then you open, and the whole value of the experience comes pouring through. I mean, it's really, really rich. And it's a great thing. And who knows how long this will go on. I keep hoping more people will continue to teach this. But, you know, really, in the end, this is what is now. I don't know what the future holds. So I say, it's great that you're here. Let go of the guy Sakhar that's trying to make himself me over, is he talking to me? You talking to me? You know, get past that. Get past that. Just go, I am one with all of this. And it will work for you, and it will work for you, and it will work for you. And when I come to you, it will amp up in a way that you'll know. It just goes, something happens. And the directive for what happens is really strong. And nothing allows me to leave you until it happens. And every person in this room has their moment. Every person. And that's because I've been practicing this for 50 years. And that's something that has been learned. You know, it's a skill, basically. And I am the hose through which the water flows. But I'm no longer a constricted hose going, oh, poor me, what about me? You know, with all little twinks and problems, and, you know, the hose is all bent up. It's a hose that flows. That's all it is. And you get it. You get it when you come here and sit and ask. Okay?
I was kind of giggling at myself because I was introduced to this practice 38 years ago, and still, I think I started off with my eyes closed because that's what other teachers in this practice have done, but you start with your eyes open, right? You don't close your eyes for a few minutes first?
Well, sometimes I do.
Okay.
You tune in.
Yeah.
Sometimes I tune in, sometimes the tuning is already in place. I'm not mechanistic. You know, I just, whatever is. If the flow is going on, then flow. If there's no flow, I go. And then there's always a point where ignition happens. You know, starts to work, and there it is. And then, you know, it goes until the class is over. Anyone else?
Yeah. Meditation, it's always been to me like a watch pot that never boils. If you sit waiting for something to happen, if you just, mind is going, when am I going to get the experience? When am I going to feel that experience? It never happens.
That's a great line.
Let go and say it's surrender.
Yeah.
Then it just happens automatically.
Or
And you go, oh, yeah, wow.
it doesn't even just
No,
happen.
I just had an experience.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I mean, meditation, as you say, is a watch pot that doesn't boil. Waiting for something keeps you in a state of separation from the thing itself. If you just let go, the what is discovering what is always a revelation, because it's right there, because it is divinely ordained, if you will, and it's right in front of you and within you, and it's already happening. And all you have to do is get out of the mindset of waiting for it, thinking it's going to be something other, and realize it's not other, it's this. This is it. And so you sit there and you go, this is it? Really? This is all there is? Well, just sit with it for a bit. And you just sit with it, and you just sit, and suddenly you go, oh. It's like this little creeping thing that comes inside you, and it just says, this is it. This is it. Oh, this is it. This is it. That's it. That's what happens. And then you bow down because you're so lucky. Okay? Lunchtime. Thank you guys. Thanks for coming. We'll have a couple-hour break. You can have lunch, go for a walk, go to the shrine, go to the stupa. A couple of things. We have Rob Baker, or can I call him? Always is here with his group to help work on the stupa. They're rebuilding it and fixing it. This is the third year in a row now, I think. 5 years in a row. Wow. And they're doing it totally out of the generosity of their heart, and they've driven from Denton, Texas, to be here. And if it's possible, we need a collection basket here. There's a number of collection baskets today, but one of them really needs to be for Rob Baker and his group to help in the feeding the people who are working here, adding to the construction materials, whatever your heart tells you would like to help with. Please leave some money or just see him. Raise your hand so everybody knows. Thank you. And so you can help out with that. And then also, I think most of you know, we now pay for this rental space rather than have it as a gift. And it's $500 for the weekend. And so we ask people to leave $10. And, more if you want, but $10, and Blanche and I will make up the difference. And then tonight, we ask for $10 for the $20 for the dinner. And again, if you don't have it, it's okay. We'll make up the difference. But contributing to all of this becomes helpful. I don't ask for money for me or there's no donation to any of us for doing this. It's just to help the process. So please, those of you who can, chip in. Those of you who can't, there's no judgment. Do what one can do. Okay? Again, thank you, and we'll see you about 3.